Well, I'm back. It's part 2 of the Ticketmaster and we're in Peterborough here at East Delph Lakes. We're fishing on the back lake. It's a lovely, mature little 2-acre pit full of beautiful fish, and they're showing, they're fizzing, so hopefully we'll be in for a couple. Conditions are going to be against us, so we're set to have the hottest day of the year today and tomorrow, with it being up to mid-30s, so it's going to be scorching hot. I don't think the carp are going to like it, but hopefully we'll be able to create a few chances in the edge and maybe nick 1 or 2 during the night. Let's see what the next 48 hours has to offer. Well, I've just grabbed James, the fishery owner, who's going to hopefully give us a little bit of an insight into the lakes and what he's created here at East Delph. So I know you've had the lake for about 5 years now, haven't you?
Yeah, 5 years. 5 years ago I was a teacher up in East London. So we had a bit of luck on the property market. House went up well up in value. I've always wanted to run a fishery, so my fantastic wife agreed to remortgage the house. And that funded this.
I think it's one of every angler's dreams, isn't it, to have your own fishery?
Absolutely, always wanted to do it, but never had the money.
Yeah, but then it just fell into place and you fell over your fell over your feet on this one. 5
years ago it was like a match fishery. Everywhere was just bindweed and brambles, it was run down.
Yeah.
Netted the lakes, took out a lot of the smaller fish, reduced the stock, built all the swims up, put the otter fence in.
Yeah.
And it's been 5 years of hard graft, but it's beginning to pay off.
Yeah.
The surroundings are idyllic, and the fish, people come for the fish because they're so scaly and old and characterful.
Well, fingers crossed we'll get a few this session. I've seen plenty of pictures on Facebook and on Instagram. So
I tell you what, Harry, though, we're up against it, aren't we? With this weather, you're up against it.
I know, it's going to be hard.
What's it? Record temperatures ever, up into 38 degrees.
I know, hottest day of the year.
Thunderstorms.
I'm dreading it.
Torrential downpours.
That's it.
You know, I'm sure 1 or 2 will be up for a feed.
I think so.
Crossed.
We've seen a few this morning, haven't we? We've done a couple of laps now and seen fish in the corners, and even in the middle they were fizzing up when we got here first thing. So
I
maybe
think
a little bit of food, switch them on.
I think so, but as you know, I think the challenge is there's going to be sunbathing most of the time.
I
here,
think so,
aren't
mate.
they?
Maybe try zigs. Zigs do quite well on here, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Zigs, little patches of boilies in the shady spots, tight to the islands.
Yeah.
Maybe try a bit of pellet in open water.
Okay, plenty to go at.
Plenty to go at.
So heading into my session, what sort of advice would you give me and anyone else who sets up to fish here on the back lake?
Well, I mean, I walk around every day, so I see what works and what doesn't work. And what I can say with 100% confidence is the boilie water.
Okay, yeah.
They like to eat good quality fresh bait. Particles, maggots, that kind of thing, it's not really the one on here.
No. Do you think maybe from when it used to be a match venue, the sort of smaller particles just got overfished and now the fish
quite possibly. I mean, when people try the method feeder, it doesn't really work, and maybe that's because they're kind of used to it from the match days. And I think in these conditions, they're going to be spending obviously their time in the upper layers, aren't they? And zigs are the one.
Yep.
The mean old horrible fishery owners ban floater, loose feeding with floaters. So
what's the thinking behind that?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. I did allow it when I first bought it.
Yeah.
And quite quickly, quite a lot of the fish had a bit of mouth damage from it. So I was faced with a choice. I could either ban loose feeding floaters and stop floater fishing, or have a population of fish with damaged mouths. So it was a no-brainer. I put it out on the Facebook page, asked people what they thought.
Yeah.
The overwhelming response was to ban loose feeding floaters.
Certainly hasn't done the fish any harm. Well, I think going forward it is going to be a gruelling 48 hours, but I'm going to have another lap around, decide where to fish, and hopefully it won't be long before I get one in the net.
Fingers crossed, mate. Good luck.
Cheers, dude. So I arrived at the lake just after 6 o'clock and met James, the fishery owner, in the car park, who let us through. We had a quick lap, could see plenty of fizzing and plenty of action, so I wasted no time getting my barrow unloaded, getting round here, and just flicking a couple of singles out to see if I can nick a quick fish. I opted for this peg predominantly because it controls the middle body of the lake. The margins either side of the peg look really promising, and it was where most of the fizzing was this morning, so it was a great starting point. Got all the gear in the swim, double checked I was happy, and then I popped back to the car park end where all the mats and slings are kept. Everything's provided here to protect the lake's biosecurity, so there's 0% chance in disease being spread from fishery to fishery. It's by far the safest and most effective way of protecting a fishery stock, so if you come to East Delph, leave your nets and your mats at home. They're all provided here for you. As I mentioned, we're on the back lake. It's a lovely little pit, just over 2 acres in size, reed fringed with 4 lovely little dot islands which just look like they're going to attract the carp. There's a big bowl area in the middle where I'm sure the fish will push to when the lake's busy and there's a lot of angling pressure, but I'm sure that there'll be a few chances in the edge. With the margins being really deep, I reckon the fish hug that near margin and use it as a patrol route just around the lake. So we've got loads of options and I've got plenty of tricks up my sleeve to hopefully nick a carp or two. I'd love to catch one out of the edges. It's so exciting when their rod rattles off and catching them at close quarters. As well as that, I think they'll definitely be up for a little feed during the night out in the middle. That seems to be where most of the activity's been this morning, so that's another option. As well as that, we've got them lovely little dot islands which are obvious patrol routes for the fish. Islands always hold carp and I think they're slightly pushed off the main bank where the angling pressure will be, so the fish feel a little bit safer cruising around. That is until they come across my little hook bait, of course, but we've got plenty of time, plenty of options. The weather's not going to work in our favour, but I'm fishing. What more can you ask for? Well, unfortunately, I couldn't get a quick bite this morning when them fish were feeding hard out in the middle of the lake, but things aren't looking too good for now. The fish have all come up in the water and just basking in the sun. You're not allowed to feed surface baits here. I have got a couple of zigs out, which I've just been moving to areas where I've seen the most fish activity, but it's certainly not going to be thick and fast action at the minute, I don't think. When it gets like this, it's just important to keep chopping and changing and try and get something just right so you get a bite. Well, I was just literally tearing my hair out, thinking why have I not had a bite? My zigs were positioned absolutely perfectly, probably 6 inches under the surface, right in the cruising zone of the fish. And then my left hand rod's just dropped back, so we're playing a fish. It feels like it's been a long time coming, but thankfully we've had a bite. Hopefully in a few minutes time she'll be in the net. These zigs have been out there for a good 3 or 4 hours now, and it paid just to be patient and consistent with it. Sometimes I'll chop and change, but what I found this morning was the more I cast out, the more the fish spooked off to another area of the lake. So it's paid off just keeping still, sitting on my hands, and finally one's rattled off. So I was getting a bit impatient around half hour ago, so we sent the drone up and we actually see fish right over where my zigs were, so I stuck with it and this one just rattled off. Nice little one. Ooh. Look at that, hook's just in the bottom lip. Yes! Felt like I'd waited ages for that one. Looks like a lovely scaly mirror, so it's well worth the wait. I'll put a top on so you keep watching, and then we'll get the fish out. Well, how about that for a cool little character fish? Certainly recognise this one if it gets much bigger with its tail like that, but what a lovely mirror. Taken on a zig. I knew the fish were there, I'd sat on my hands and just waited. Didn't want to spook them with the casting too much, with it being a hot day. They're very touchy out there and didn't like too much disturbance, so I thought I'd leave them be with the rods in position. And a couple of hours later, we had this one in the net, so well chuffed to get off the mark. Looks like we could be in for a good couple of nights. Having just slipped back that lovely mirror, I'm going to quickly give you a few top tips which I always follow with my zig fishing. Firstly, you'll notice my bobbins are nice and tight to the rod blanks. This is because my line is bowstring tight out to their lead. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, as soon as that lead moves, I've got maximum indication at my bite alarm end, so I can get to the rod as quickly as possible. Also, by having the tight line, I find it works almost like an elastic band effect at the lead end. So when the fish picks up the bait, if the fish is a bit finicky, the lead will be pulled back towards me, helping set the hook. Or if the fish picks it up and goes on a mission, it will just be an absolute one-toner. So always fish a tight bobbin, straight out with your rod pointing straight out to where the rig's positioned, and you should get nice indication on every bite. In my hands is a zig rig. It's a very basic way of fishing a bait suspended in the middle layers of the water, but using a lead setup rather than a float setup back down. So it's a floating hook bait. I'll have my lead attached to the other end on a standard lead clip system. Although carp are predominantly bottom feeders, they spend a lot less time on the bottom than you may expect. A lot of the time they'll be swimming around the middle layers or just below the surface, basking in the sun where the water might warm up slightly quicker, or in the night where it might be slightly cooler, and a zig is a perfect way of fooling a fish onto the bank that may not be feeding on the lake bed. This session I'm going to go for black as my colour of choice. I've got a little red zigger liner on there just as a little bit of fleck of colour, but I find black silhouettes lovely in the sunlight, and in the very top few inches of water just gives the fish something to pick out from underneath. If I was dropping them down slightly deeper, I might go for something a bit brighter just so it stands out that a little bit more. When set up correctly, the bites can come thick and fast fishing with zigs. Whether you've got days or just a few hours at your disposal, a zig in the right hands is absolutely lethal for putting a few fish on the bank. Well, we're heading into the final few minutes of daylight now, and my rigs are set. I've got the bait on the spot. I really don't think I could be fishing it any more effectively if I tried. Luckily, I winkled that one out on a zig earlier on, which I'm chuffed to bits about. I think the fish have felt just as lethargic as I have with that blistering sun we've had today. So I've changed tactic, come off the zigs. I've flicked 2 baits out into the middle of the lake where I've put quite a bit of bait around it. Put all my eggs in one basket. Hopefully the fish get their heads down during the hours of darkness. We're due a little bit of rain throughout the night, so how that will affect the fishing, I'm not too sure with the hot weather we've had today and due tomorrow, but I'm sure it won't do much harm. Fingers crossed, a little bit of light drizzle will just spur the fish on that extra bit that I need. Well, good morning, or not so good morning I should say really. Last night was probably the most uncomfortable night I've ever spent on the bank. Temperatures soared all night, and as well as that there was a huge thunderstorm which made everything just uncomfortable to fish in. Everything was drenched and the fish just were not playing ball, so not surprised to have not caught anything throughout the night, but I've been up early and I've seen fish over that far side again, so rather than just wander around there and take a chance with a rod, I'm going to up sticks totally, get all the kit around there and set up for a few hours, hopefully to winkle out a fish or two. It looks good, it looks promising. The wind's pumping over there nicely, so for a small lake, a little bit of wind can definitely make a big difference, pushing any food particles held up in the water column over to that area of the lake. So I'm going to get the rods on the barra and head round there as quickly as possible. It's been proper quiet this morning. I've not managed any fish since that one I had on the zig yesterday. So I've reeled in, gone for a wander round, and it's clear that on this island just over my shoulder, there's a lot of fish moving around it. One of my top tips, and I'm sure any other angler would give the same, is location is so important. If the fish aren't in front of you, you're not going to catch them. So keep on your toes. If you see fish activity, whether it's a little bit of fizzing or a fish show elsewhere on the lake, don't be afraid to get around there and give it a go, because you can only catch what fish are in front of you. So this morning, I've not seen a lot. I've had a wander, found a few around this island, so I'm going to get around here because it's obvious that there's more fish here to be caught. Definitely going to put a rod on that island, but fingers crossed it's not long before we're bent into another one. Well, I had a sneaky feeling with the wind pushing along the surface, the fish would get in this corner. So I've just plopped one rod on a single stick, literally at the end of this platform. And then I was just sorting out some rigs to go through with you, and it melted off. So the rod had only been out there probably 15 minutes. Just goes to show that I was saying 5 minutes in the right place is better than 3 days in the wrong. Max, my rod's going. My rod's going. quick. Well, that's one in the net and my receiver's going ballistic, so my other rod's away. How crazy is that? Waited all day and nothing, and then my two rods sat in two separate swims just next to each other, right in the margin on the end of this wind. They've both rattled away at the same time. Look at that, my little wafter just hanging out of its mouth. Short little fluorocarbon rig, and it's in the net. How's that for a turnout? Just when you think things couldn't get any worse. Change of tactic, change of area of the lake. Literally, I've got a swim just to my right, and then this one here. I've just put one rod in each swim. Got the first one in the net. As I've netted that, my receiver in my pocket's gone into meltdown. Luckily, Max and John are both on hand, so that's how I could get away with fishing two, just alongside each other. Max picked up into it for me, and we've got this stunning fully scaled. So, two lovely mirror carp in the net. That's how we do it. Well, finally the hard work's paid off, and I've managed to catch this lovely mirror. I'm gonna quickly weigh it, and then we'll lift it up and show you what it looks like. Just check its fins are nice and flat. The sling's all zeroed up. Oh, well, it's not quite a 20, but it's 19.5 pounds. But she is a corker. Have a bit of that, 19.5 pound. Lovely East Delph Back Lake mirror carp. Just goes to show you, 5 minutes in the right place is better than 5 days in the wrong. Not been around here long, and both my rods have gone literally at the same time. So just as I got this one in the net, the other one rattled off. You don't get double takes too often, but it does happen using two rods. It's not unheard of. I'm well chuffed. 16.5 pound. But you wait till you see the scales on this one. She's a pearler. How about that for a little scaly banger? Cool little tail on it as well. I reckon this one's seen some action. So this one fell to the left-hand rod, and when the cast went out to that island, I just knew it was going to do a bite. It landed within inches of the island, felt it down, nice little thud on the bottom of the lake. Everything just felt right, so although I was surprised when it rattled off, I really wasn't, because I didn't think I could have put a bait anywhere else to get a bite. Just goes to show on day tickets like this one, trial and error, persisting with different tactics, trying to make something happen is much better than sitting on your hands and waiting for it to happen. Although that worked for me yesterday for a few hours with the zigs, this morning nothing availed, so I knew I had to mix it up. There's loads of fish in this lake, and within minutes the change paid off. Taking on my fluorocarbon D rig, which I'll run through with you shortly. Both my fish this morning have been on that rig, so it's working for me. I'm sure it'll work for you as well. We'll break it down, show you what components I use and how I tie it to catch carp like this one. I'm going to quickly run you through my fluorocarbon D rig. It's a rig that I've only used for the past few months, but from the off I caught on it, so no doubt it will catch me fish in the coming future. It's super simple to tie, but super effective. Out here today I'm fishing over small firm areas, so I don't need to worry about a supple hook link. A nice stiff hook link sat on the bottom is going to be absolutely fine. With a few baits around it, that rig's going to be ready for the fish to suck in the hook bait and hopefully catch it straight in the bottom lip. To start with, I'll strip off about 13-14 inches of my 20-pound fluorocarbon hook link. I'll then take a size 4 curve shank hook. Here I'm using the micro barbed version as they're permitted on this particular fishery. Then pass the hook link through the eye of the hook from front to back, leaving a tag end of around 3 inches. And then you can knotless knot it on 8 times down the shank and then twice back up before poking it through from the back to front. That's your knotless knot. Pull that down nice and tight. Simple as that. I'll then take a piece of rig tubing. Only small piece, maybe 4mm. This is to trap that fluorocarbon to the shank of the hook. Poke that on the tag end. and then poke the hook point through it as well. Then you can pull the tag end through, so that there's about a 5-10 mil gap from the bottom of your knot to the top of the tubing. I then take a mini hook ring swivel. This is what we're going to use to attach the bait. You can use the small bait screws, but I prefer to use these just because they're a little bit smaller, and I know I can leave a bait out there for a long period of time. Pass that onto the tag end and then back through the eye of the hook. What I'll do then is pull it all the way through so it's really tight. Trim off the tag end about 10 mil from the eye of the hook, and then taking a lighter, carefully blob it down about 5 mil, and then you can put it back on itself, slide the tubing down a little bit further. That's created my D. So super neat, but super simple. I then measure off from the hook 7 inches, which is my personal favourite. I've just found that to be the best all-round distance. Throughout the session, if I feel like I need to adjust it, I can, but this rig in particular, I'm quite comfortable with that. Pinch it, overhand loop knot, pull that through with a needle, and then before you pull that knot down tight, you just want to moisten the knot, and then using a multi-tool, I can hook that on there, put it down nice and tight, and that's it. That's my finished rig. What I'll do now is pop that in the rig box. That'll ensure when I go to cast the rig out, the fluorocarbon's nice and straight. But just before I do that, I'll put an anti-tangle sleeve on to pull over my quick change swivel so everything's nice and neat, and I can change the rig in quick time should I need to. When fishing to an undercut island as I am here, it's so important to make sure you're tighter than anyone else will be fishing to get an extra bite or two. A lot of people will say, that's it, that'll do, that'll never do. Make sure you get as tight as you can. Then fish use the islands as patrol routes, which means they'll stay tight on one side. So the tighter you are, the more chance you've got in getting a bite. Well, I'm all set for the night. I've got a couple of rods out on the islands just in front of me, one to the left and one to the right. Both rods are within 6 inches of the island, so I'm tucked in right on that undercut, as tight as I can be. All that's left for me to do is put some free baits out around my hook baits. For this, I'm using 15mm hybrid. A washed out bait is basically just a boilie that's been soaked in water, whether it's lake water or mineral water, doesn't make too much difference. My preference is lake water, just because I've found that to be more successful. As you can see, it just goes a lot more paler and a lot more softer. Basically just eludes the fish into thinking that the bait's been sat out on the lake bed a lot longer than they really have. Also makes them a bit more digestible just because they are so much softer from the moment you put them into the lake. Often when you're using washed out baits, the fish feed a lot more confidently and a lot quicker, because on venues like this where they see different boilies day in, day out, a hard bait which is full of scent might push the fish away knowing that they've freshly been introduced into the swim. With these, the fish think they've been there 2 or 3 days and an angler might have gone home and left that baiting spot with there not being any hook baits in position. That's where my rigs come into play and hopefully pick up a fish. Always nice to wake up early in the morning and be playing fish. The rods have been out there since about 8 o'clock last night. I've been up the last sort of hour or so, seen fish over both the areas, so just sat on my hands. I didn't want to disturb them at this time of the day when they're quite happily feeding on the areas where I've put bait, and knew my rigs were positioned perfect, so. Well, the rod's been out all night. I've been up since about 4:45. It's now just gone 7 o'clock. But it shows there's an obvious bite time here. First thing in the morning seems to be when the fish are more active. They've been showing over my spots. They've been fizzing up out in the middle. With the water being so warm now, the fish are super active. They do put up a good scrap when you're playing them. It's so important just to take your time. Let the fish do what it wants to do, and then when it's well and truly beat, you can glide it over the net. So I'm certainly not going to rush this one. In the net. There we go, double trouble again. Just shows in here the fish can switch on at any time. There's 2 quick bites, having waited nearly 24 hours since the last flow of action yesterday. Takes me up to 5 fish though, so for a weekend's angling, that's not bad at all. Well, there we go, a lovely little mirror cup to show for my efforts. This rod was out all night and it rattled off at first light this morning, so buzzing to get this one. I'm sure it's going to be a monster one day. Well, what an end to the session that is. 5 fish to show for my effort, all cracking mirrors to just under 20 pounds, so happy days. Just goes to show when you work at things in the right situations and persistence in others can both pay off. It's just about learning to read the situations and getting it right on the day. Reflecting back on the last 48 hours, it's been absolutely cracking. I've caught 5 lovely fish, so I'm more than chuffed with that. Started out on the zigs, managed to winkle that first low double out. As the session unfolded, it was clear I needed to work at things a little bit harder and try and create a few more opportunities. So I moved around this side of the lake, found a few close in, and was able to get quick bites over lightly baited areas. Throughout the day, nothing else happened, but then last night I got my baits bang on, nice and tight to the islands, handful of bait over reach, and just sat back and left them to it. The fish were very lethargic yesterday afternoon, yet this morning it come alive. They were showing, they were fizzing, so I just sat on my hands. I knew that the rods were going to go, it was just a matter of time, and within minutes I had my first take, shortly followed by the second one. So sitting on my hands paid dividends, caught another couple of lovely mirrors. I'm leaving here a happy boy. That's it, we've come to the end of Ticketmaster episode 2. It's been a cracking session here at East Delph Lakes. I caught them 5 lovely fish in the margin, up against the island, and I managed to nick one on a zig on the first day. It's set to be the hottest day of the year, so I'm not going to hang around for too long. The barrow's loaded. I'm going to go and find a nice beer garden not too far from where I live.